So let's start with a basic question. What makes writing good? We all know good writing when we see it or claim to. We may even be able to point out a pithy phrase, a striking metaphor, or a solid premise if we're asked. But taken on the whole, what exactly makes a piece of writing successful? What pushes writing from basic communication to transcendent expression? What are the mechanisms at work and how can we teach them? Can we teach them at all? Writing instructors and composition scholars alike have mulled over these questions for decades. Waves of theory crested into teaching approaches that have defined the writing classroom for millions of first-year composition students. Everything from workshopping multiple drafts to the supremacy of argumentation over other forms of discourse, many of these assumptions about what we should be teaching in an English class are rooted in often contradictory theories about what good writing is at the college level. This video will look at the dominant approach of writing as a process, its theory and methods, as well as alternative approaches and criticisms. Process theory of composition is a field of composition studies that focuses on writing as a process rather than a product. In 1972, Donald M. Murray's influential pamphlet, Teach Writing as a Process, Not a Product, proved a foundational text of the movement, and much of today's English instructional practice is rooted in its basic principles. In his short essay, Murray argues that the English teacher, who often has a background in literary criticism, holds student writing up to the same standards, and that this has negative consequences for both teacher and student. Our students knew it wasn't literature when they passed it in, and our attack usually does little more than confirm their lack of self-respect for their work and for themselves. We are as frustrated as our students, for conscientious, doggedly responsible, repetitive autopsying doesn't give birth to live writing. Murray advises instructors to instead focus their energies on helping students discover their own voices, examine their own assumptions, and be guided through a process of discovery through language that involves stages of pre-writing, writing, and rewriting. Various theories emerged subsequently referring to the same process versus product dichotomy. For example, James McCrimmon called it writing as a way of knowing versus writing as a way of telling. Linda Flower termed it writer-based versus reader-based prose. No matter the terms, this distinction between the two was set, and by the early 1980s this was the dominant instructional approach employed in writing classrooms from elementary school to university throughout the United States. Murray states that there are 3 stages of writing, but that the time spent in each varies based on the writer's personality, work habits, and the challenge of the writing task itself. Rewriting is, in Murray's words, everything that takes place before the first draft, and he argues that this is where 85% of writing happens. This includes daydreaming, researching, taking in opinions, forming arguments, developing audience awareness, and imagining the form of the writing to come. Writing is drafting, putting the musings of the mind to paper in their first draft. This is often the fastest and scariest part of the process, as it makes clear everything the writer knows and everything the writer does not yet fully understand. Rewriting involves looking back at one subject, audience, and form with a clearer purpose and greater precision. What do I need to explain better? What is the best way to present this information, to prove my points, to move my audience to action or greater understanding? These are the considerations the author must make when they design, reimagine, research, and rewrite. Editing is also part of this process and should come last. It involves considering one's piece line by line and even word by word. A rewrite will often take much longer than the first draft of an essay, article, book, or story. Murray also outlines 10 implications to this approach at the end of his essay, and they give an indication as to how instructors can teach composition as a process rather than a product in their own classrooms. Murray maintains that student texts are important artifacts in any writing classroom, and should be examined and studied with an analytical eye towards the writer's choices. Strategies such as peer review, workshopping of drafts, and the highlighting of previous student samples can help in this regard. Students should find their own subjects and topics within broadly defined parameters, so consider creating assignments that allow for student choice in terms of topic and direction. Students should be allowed to use their own language and expressions in their writings, so it's worth considering whether corrections and suggestions that are made are actually inhibiting authentic expression. Students should draft as much as they need, so each new draft is equal to a new paper. Consider instituting a period of time in your course that allows for ungraded drafting and opportunity to workshop and receive feedback while in process. Students should be encouraged to find any form of writing which helps communicate what they have to say, and since the focus is on process, creative and functional writing actually do go through the same process, so consider the types of writing that you're assigning, the tasks as well, and ensure that students have the opportunity to respond formally and informally across multiple genres and modes. Mechanics should be addressed last, and should focus on those areas that would obscure meaning for the reader. So consider centering grammar and mechanical instruction and correction on errors that obscure the writer's meaning and explain these errors in those terms. Deadlines are essential to creating time pressure, though enough space should be created in a course for each stage of the writing process. Consider allowing time in the course schedule for pre-writing, activities, research, and talking topics through before embarking on the actual writing task. Instructors should approach giving feedback by indicating what other choices a writer may have made at a given moment. Consider grading only the final drafts of projects while providing feedback on ungraded drafts that come before. Students can self-pace up until the deadline, exploring their own process because some will need more time in a given stage. Consider allowing students to submit drafts of any length or form for ungraded feedback from the instructor. In writing, there are no absolutes. What works for one form, audience, or purpose may not work for another. It is important that all students understand this.